So you want to know what the best cardio equipment in the gym is? Well, lucky for you guys, in this video today, we're going to be breaking down what cardio is best for what type of person. We're going to evaluate everything that you're going to find in the gym, and we're going to break down who it's for, who it's not for, what kind of goals you can expect to accomplish on each cardio equipment so that we can fine tune what's going to be best for you. When it comes to fat loss, some of the best machines, they might not be entry level. That means that if you're not ready for it, you got to start with something else and then progressively work your way up. Some of you might not be interested in fat loss at all, and your only concern is physical performance. Those are going to be entirely separate machines altogether. We're going to cover over all of it, so don't even worry. Before we jump into the machines, there's going to be two things that you're really going to want to know, even if you're not doing fat loss, even if your goal is to get in better cardiovascular health. Understanding these two metrics is going to go a very long way at tracking and measuring your performance in the gym or outside of the gym so that you're getting the most value out of your workouts. First and foremost, we're going to talk about METs. METs are metabolic equivalent of task. What is that? If you're in a vegetative state, or if you're completely stationary, not moving, imagine you're in a hospital gurney, right? No movement whatsoever. You're going to have a metabolic equivalent of task of 1. That's you just simply existing. There's no activity going on whatsoever. Your body is just in regulation mode, keeping the lights on, keeping your internal organs functioning. Otherwise, there's no movement going on. Any form of cardio you do, or really any activity you do in general, is going to have a MET, a metabolic equivalent of task. This ratio is going to help us understand just how much effort is going into a workout. If an activity has a MET ratio of 2, that means you're consuming double the amount of energy that it takes just to merely exist. Making this super easy to understand, if you burn 2,000 calories a day at rest, no activity whatsoever, this means that if you were to perform a task with a ratio of 2 for a full 24 hours, by the end of that day, at the end of that 24-hour period, you would then have burned 4,000 calories. If that activity had a MET of 3, then you'd be burning 6,000 calories. Does that make sense? Using this, we can really understand and break down the level of effort that we're using across the spectrum, regardless of what cardio we're doing. In the gym, make sure that you choose cardio machines, or at least to the best of your ability, pick ones that has a MET option on the display menu. Most LCD screens will have a display button. At least modern equipment will have this. And this goes a very long way at being a good measure of how hard you're actually working in the gym. The next thing I want you guys to know, it's going to be watts. Watts is the electrical output of any cardio machine that you're working on. As you can see right here on the whiteboard, 1 watt equals 3.5 calories, roughly. It's not perfect, but it's close. That means in a 1-hour period, if you were to generate 100 watts, you would then have burned 350 calories. Now, it's pretty standard for the very typical person to be able to burn 600 calories per hour across multiple different cardio machines. An easy way to eyeball this without needing a calculator is that if you're generating 175 watts per hour on a cardio machine, you can be relatively sure you're burning about 600 calories per hour. Granted, this is only true if the machine you're on is giving you accurate feedback. There's nothing we can do about machines that are overestimating or underestimating our calorie output. But using the tools we have available, this is as close as we can get it. So there's really 2 schools of thought here. If you're doing cardio for fat loss, you want to be targeting somewhere around the 6 to 8 range for METs and somewhere between 150 and 200 watts. This will put you most likely into zone 2 unless you're incredibly in shape, or unfortunately incredibly out of shape. You might be outside that range. For most of us, you'll fit nicely in there getting zone 2 cardio. That means that you're mostly going to be burning off body fat, not glycogen, coming from the bloodstream as carbohydrate storage. Ideal for fat loss is zone 2 cardio. But zone 2 cardio, not the greatest for performance athletes that are trying to really up their VO2 max. Situations where this might be important is if you're in contact sports and there's an objective. Let's say there's a loose puck, loose soccer ball. You got to catch the football, you're a wide receiver. It's all about beating the other player to the objective. In situations like this, it's who's outputting the most METs, it's who's outputting the most wattage that's gonna get to that ball or that objective first. So in these cases, the cardio you choose has gotta be able to maximize that wattage output, maximize that METs output. As it so happens, usually fat loss and cardiovascular achievement, they're not always on the same page. Sometimes you're gonna have to sacrifice one goal to accomplish the other. Now let's head to the gym. We're gonna take a look at all the different types of equipment that you're commonly going to see. We're gonna break them all down, see who they're for, see who they're not for. We're going to be starting off with the Recumbent Bike. You've probably seen these in the back of the gym. They're very standard. It's the seated bike that has the bike rest. Up front, these bikes have a few glaring issues with them. You're leaning back. It's very easy to just go laissez-faire with this and not really accomplish much. On top of that, if you've seen people on these, you've almost certainly seen someone who's reading a book or doing homework while on it. The unfortunate truth is, especially if you're trying to lose weight, if the exercise you're performing isn't that intense, it's probably not doing much, if anything at all. You could spend 60 minutes on a recumbent bike and maybe only burn 150 to 200 calories, which is actually almost less effort than walking. The only exception to this is if you are really hauling it, pressing the pedals on high resistance. But the thing is, in order to get up to a MET level on the recumbent bike that's going to be above 6 or 7 METs, you have to actually put in quite a painstaking large amount of effort, which I don't think most people are ever going to be able to sustain for 60 minutes. So this machine in general, it's just very ineffective. I'm not going to actually recommend it to anybody. It doesn't really serve a purpose. It's just simply too easy of a cardio machine. Moving on to the Concept 2 rower. Every gym has one of these, and you'll oftentimes see a lot of people really hauling it on them. A lot of people like the rower. The rower is fantastic for generating high amounts of wattage, meaning you're getting a whole lot of METs in here. But here's my problem with it, okay? If you're trying to do fat loss, really the most important factor is duration. You have to be able to do something that you can maintain a wattage of around 200 METs in between 6 and 8 for an hour. That's going to really nicely put you in that fat burning zone, generate somewhere between 600 and 700 calories per session. If you can do those 4 or 5 times a week, you're going to be burning off just about a pound of fat every week. You maintain your diet the way it is, that's a pound per week, pretty good deal. Problem with the Concept 2 rower, it's just hard to sustain for long periods of time. There's a lot of performance athletes that have to do the Concept 2 rower for different types of meets. Sometimes it's high rocks, sometimes it's CrossFit. You hear people talking about calorie rows. These are all bursts of speed rows that are all about burning the most amount of calories in a small amount of time. That's pretty cool on the surface. But if we're trying to burn, say, 600 calories on a Concept 2 rower, for most people, it's completely out of reach. Maybe you get to 100 tops. After that, for most people, their workout's going to be done. It's a high intensity exercise. It doesn't have a whole lot of longevity. Now, for people that are really trying to maximize their lung capacity, the Concept 2 rower is actually pretty nice for that, but I still actually think there's better machines out there that are going to achieve this in a much more efficient way. And the truth of the matter is, unless you're trying to actually get really good at rowing, the Concept 2 rower doesn't really translate well to basically any other activity. And the amount of force you need to actually get the high wattage out of the Concept 2 rower, you almost certainly have to already be someone who's lifting heavy weights, especially in the row or the pull-up, to even be able to generate the type of force that's giving you that calorie burn in the first place. I don't think you're going to get there using the rower on its own. So for that reason, for this machine, I'm also going to say I'm out. I wouldn't personally use it to improve my cardio or my fat loss. Something that is actually worth looking at, very similar in concept, it's going to be the Airdyne bike. The Airdyne bike is very similar in the Concept 2 rower in that it uses wind resistance. This wind resistance is dynamic, meaning the harder you push, the harder the feedback is pushed upon you. This is actually going to be probably the best thing that you can do for VO2 max. If you're a football watcher, the NFL season is right around the corner. What I want you to do is keep an eye out on the sideline. sidelines. You're almost certainly going to see at least one or two of these on the sidelines of every single football game. This is actually the ideal machine for practicing sprints. It's total body, you're using your arms and your legs to push this bike as hard as possible. It's amazing for anaerobic, explosive results, but it's pitiful for endurance. If you're someone that's trying to lose weight, this machine in particular really only has two modes: pitiful pedaling and all-out craziness. If you're just doing a pitiful pedal, you're maybe gonna get your wattage to 100. It's not gonna feel like anything's happening, and that's because there really isn't. As soon as you start introducing intensity, good luck getting this thing to stay around 200 watts. The wattage on these bikes goes up very rapidly. In fact, in a second here, you're gonna see me crank this thing all the way up to 1000. I can't maintain something like this any longer than 15 seconds. I'm not gonna get a whole lot of calorie burn out of that. Maybe I hit 30 or 40 calories, but after that I'm cooked. I'm gasping for air. There's just gonna be no way that I hit the Airdyne bike long enough to actually get calorie burn for fat loss purposes. So for people on a diet, people trying to lose weight, the Airdyne bike is out. If you're someone that's playing a lot of football, doing hockey, maybe you play European leg hockey, you're gonna wanna be doing this. It's gonna help you get that cardiovascular strength so that you can beat your opponent to whatever the objective is. Now that we've got these out of the way, let's introduce the machines that you're gonna start wanting to do for fat loss. This is where things are getting kicked into gear. We're gonna go over and take a look at the Stairmaster. The Stairmaster is our first opportunity to really work with some consistent wattage, getting that METs into the 6 to 8 range, and also have it be something that's relatively sustainable. There is a caveat to the Stairmaster that we should address up front. If you're on the Stairmaster and you're holding onto the rails whatsoever, you're going to be reducing your output. Some of you probably have a body weight scale in your bathroom. You can try this experiment out on your own. Stand on your scale and then using one of your hands, lean on the counter and see how much weight you can take off the scale. I bet you some of you out there could get as much as half your body weight removed off the scale. That's what happens when you're doing that on the Stairmaster. You're taking a lot of weight off the machine, transferring it to your arms. Your legs are not really doing as much. The machine's gonna lie to you, say that you're still burning a lot of calories. It's actually gonna be cut in half. For that reason, I think the Stairmaster is a great start. We're getting into the fat loss territory, but I do still think we can do a lot better. Personally, I'm not going to necessarily recommend the Stairmaster. I think it's too difficult to do for long periods of time, especially for beginners. And once you have the cardio strength to actually really perform, there's just simply better options out there that are going to elevate your calorie burn even better than what you could do on the Stairmaster. A great alternative to the Stairmaster, it's going to be similar in concept. It's actually the incline walk. Really the core difference here is that you're going to be on a treadmill. It's going to be a lot easier to pace your steps out better. With the Stairmaster, you've really only got one option. You take one step or you take two steps. With the incline treadmill, you can always take shorter steps to make sure that your cadence is making more sense with the equipment. And you can also change the speed of the belt much more minutely than you can on the Stairmaster. Most Stairmasters just have level options. With the treadmill, you can break it down to 1/10 of a mile per hour. That really helps you dial into what you think is the most maintainable speed. Of course, the same thing applies. You can't have your hands on the machine. I see a lot of people hands back holding onto the screen. Big mistake, you're taking a lot of weight off the machine, and not only that, but by leaning back you're actually reducing the incline grade and you're hacking it into becoming a flat surface again. This is just no good. If you want to be on the incline treadmill, you got to have those arms swaying at your hips like you would if you were doing a normal walk. Anything other than that, it's gonna be a waste. You're gonna be pulling away effort off the machine. The good news here is I do believe that the incline treadmill is much easier to maintain cadence and pace for an hour long as opposed to the Stairmaster. I think more people are going to find a lot more success on the incline walk. This is especially going to be useful for people that are still on the extra heavy side. They're having a lot of trouble doing more intense cardio. At the end of the day, the incline walk is still just a walk. You could set the machine to 2 miles per hour, the incline to around 10 to 12%, and just ride that out, watch TV, You could even still have your binder out like we were looking at earlier with the Recumbent Bike. But in this case, you're actually putting in some real effort. That's gonna actually go a long way for you. With this, guys, we're moving in to the final 3. These next 3 are all going to be my personal favorite options for fat loss in the gym, and in some cases it's also going to be your best option for improving your cardiovascular abilities as well. You're not going to want to miss these. These are going to be my 3 favorite. Coming up in 3rd place for the bronze medal is going to be the elliptical machine. The elliptical has a bad rap in gyms. On forums, on Reddit, in the locker room, everybody makes fun of the elliptical, but it's a very misunderstood machine. It's basically a hybrid between a bike and jogging. Excellent on the joints. You're not going to feel any pain working out on this. And especially for rookies, you can pretty much start out on the elliptical right off the bat with no prior experience to any sort of training whatsoever. And it's going to get the job done without getting a whole lot of muscular strain. You're going to build muscle doing this. Maybe not as good as the other cardio machines, but it's going to get your body moving. And best part of all, it's going to get the calories ramped up. It's incredibly easy to get the elliptical up to that 6 to 8 METs range. It's almost going to come automatically, especially if you jack up the resistance. And the elliptical is so easy to perform on that most people are going to have no trouble whatsoever maintaining a rate of 6 to 8 METs, 200 wattage for a full hour. Looking at that, you're getting anywhere from 600 to 700 calories per hour. If you've got the time, you can crush it on the elliptical. When I train for bodybuilding shows, usually the elliptical is my go-to because it's easy enough on the body while still being able to maintain high amounts of volume of cardio. The elliptical is going to be great for everyone, comes highly recommended by me. Coming up in 2nd place, it's going to be the stationary spin bike. Now, the spin bike is so much better than the recumbent seated bike that the two really can't even be compared. The spin bike is everything a road bike is minus the actual movement. You can get the resistance on this very high. This is good for hill climbs, it's good for getting those legs nice and strong. The only downside is that a lot of the times there's no electronics in the spin bike, which means it's going to be almost impossible to track your METs or to track your wattage. There's really only so much we can do about that. Some spin bikes do have an LCD screen on them, but more oftentimes than not, you're not going to find that on them. The good news is the spin bike is one of the highest calorie burning machines out there. Although we can't necessarily track it, I assure you. If you're on the spin bike and you're going hard, you're going to be burning more calories on the spin than any of the machines that we've talked about prior today. Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, what about the rower and what about the Airdyne bike? That's true for short bursts. You're going to be burning more calories, getting more wattage on those machines, but you can't sustain them for very long. The spin bike, on the other hand, as long as your butt can handle sitting in that seat, you could basically spin all day. The calorie burn on there is going to be insane, and because you're going to be spinning for so long, your core moving up and down is going to really develop those abs. People that bike hard, like real hardcore cyclists, have ripped six packs. So the bike comes in handy for multiple different things. If you want fat loss, the bike's going to be really amazing for that. And if you're trying to really ramp up your cardiovascular health, get good at running, get good at basically anything, the spin bike is actually insane for that. Real quick, before we move on to number 1, the spin bike is so good for improving cardiovascular health that some marathon coaches actually encourage their clients not to use it. And the reason for that is because their lungs and their cardio actually exceeds what their own legs can handle when transferred over to road running, that their cardio is so strong the legs can't keep up and end up getting injured. If that's not a testament to how good the spin bike is for your cardiovascular health, meaning your lung capacity and VO2, I don't know what else is. But let's talk about number 1, guys. It should be no surprise. It's the only thing I haven't talked about yet. You probably already know what it is. It's running. Running is going to be the number 1 tool for basically any sort of cardio. If you're looking at fat loss, even a very gentle, modest pace of 10-minute miles, that's 6 miles per hour, that's going to be a sustained rate of about 10 METs. The wattage on there greatly increased. You can expect to be burning about 750 to 800 calories per hour very easily just by running a casual 10-minute mile. Now, as long as you're a little bit under 20% body fat and you've been working out a decent amount, you could go from zero running whatsoever to being able to maintain a 1-hour run on the treadmill in about 3 months. Of course, this does mean that you have to build up to it. Like I was saying in the beginning of this video, not everyone's going to be able to just walk into the gym and run on the treadmill for 60 minutes. It is something that has to be built up. You have to work for that. But once you have the ability to do it, there's not going to be a fat loss tool anything better than going for a 1-hour jog. It's just simply undefeated. And when talking about VO2 max, everything that we've looked at so far, the same also applies. If you're trying to get into any sort of athletics, what are you doing? You're running. Think about it. What are wide receivers in the NFL doing? They're quite literally running. What about soccer players? They're running. The only times you're not running is if you're playing ice hockey or if you're one of them swimmers or bikers. Every other sport involves running and sprinting. The faster you can run, the more lung capacity you're recruiting. The wattage and the METs on a sprint are freaking out of this world. METs of 15, 16, sometimes even higher. Now, granted, we're not looking at fat loss at those stages, but it just goes to show how much energy is output when doing a hard run. If you're going for a 6-minute mile, 10 miles per hour, that's a haul. You're going to be putting in a lot of energy to that. Of course, it's going to take an incredible amount of training just to even get to that point. But when they say cardio is king, they're really talking about running. Now, there is going to be one honorable mention. Some of your gyms might have these Jacob's ladders. Just want to let you guys know that they're not fun to use. You will not do the Jacob's ladder longer than 1 minute, making this probably the worst cardio machine ever invented. I'm going to give that one 2 thumbs down. But it does look cool. It looks cool to be on the big stupid machine, but I'm never going to recommend it to anyone. Hope you guys found this video very informative and very helpful. If you did, please let me know in the comments below. Your feedback is always appreciated, and it helps me understand what you guys want to see next. Don't forget to like the video. Also hit subscribe. Got new videos coming out twice a week, one every Monday, and the second video whenever I got time to get around to it. We go live for Q&A every Sunday at 11 a.m. If you've got questions, I've got answers. Feel free to hop in, and I'll help get you guys sorted. In the meantime, I've been Andrew Fillion. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.